Welcome to the 2014 opening convocation. Please be seated. Faculty, staff, students and friends, and alumni and parents watching online, you will hear from our university singers in just a moment, but first, it is indeed my honor and privilege to formally welcome you to our opening convocation. We gather each year at this time to declare the academic year officially underway, though I'm confident it would begin anyway without the benefit of grand proclamations. The law school is well into its fall semester with 1Ls already speaking fluent legalese and projecting a sense of authority and confidence unimaginable 2 weeks ago. On the undergraduate side, seniors are facing the harsh reality that each day brings another last. The last fall semester, the last requirement for a major, the last class with a favorite professor, the last opening game, the last September as an undergraduate. For the first-year undergraduates, a special welcome to Washington and Lee. Your arrival brings more to the campus than you realize. Strange as it may seem, we can already easily imagine you as seniors approaching your last year. Even more strange, perhaps, we can imagine you well into your careers and lives, ones that will make us proud for having played a part. Your presence is a vivid reminder of why we do what we do. We welcome you as another class of bright individuals we have the privilege to teach. We typically have a guest speaker or a distinguished speaker at our opening convocation. This year we have neither. In a few moments, I will come back to the podium and provide a few formal remarks. I claim the privilege of speaking to you this year because I do have a few issues I want to address with you. But let me turn now to our university singers who will formally open the convocation with their rendition of Praise the Lord.
Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. O my soul, praise him, for he is thy health and salvation. O ye who hear, now to his temple draw near. Join me in glad adoration.
Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. O my soul, praise him, for he is thy health and salvation.
O my soul, praise him,
for he is now to his temple draw near. Join me in glad adoration. Praise to the Lord, the Almighty, the King of creation. O my soul, praise him, for he is thy health and salvation. O ye who hear, now to his temple draw near. Journey in glad adoration. Praise to the Lord who doth prosper thy work and defend thee. Surely his goodness and mercy will daily attend thee. Ponder anew what the Almighty can do, if with his love he befriends thee. Praise to the Lord, oh let all that is in me adore him. that hath life and breath, come now with praises before him.
All that hath
Let the amen sound from his people again. Gladly for aye we adore. Let the amen sound from his people again. Gladly for aye we adore. Gladly for aye we adore him.
Well, my thanks, as always, to the university singers. These ceremonies are few on the university calendar. We have opening convocation, Founders Day in January, and baccalaureate and commencement. They serve the important purpose of helping us understand what it means to belong to a community. Those of us here today occupy only a small span of time in Washington and Lee's long history. Occasions like this remind us of our past and the future, our indebtedness to those who came before us, and our obligations to those yet to come. So the faculty don their academic robes, students dress a little differently than is typical on a summer Wednesday afternoon. We gather in the shadows of the graceful, dignified architecture of Washington Hall and Lee Chapel, two buildings that are so much more than mere bricks and mortar. Our university singers grace us with their beautiful music. Their many voices merging as one, an act perfectly symbolic of what a convocation should be. The seniors process to their seats through the ranks of the faculty, a few high fives along the way, the realization dawning on them that their student days are indeed numbered. 260 to be exact. It is a meaningful occasion. Today, however, I want to put formality aside and speak to you personally. That's not to say the topics will be frivolous. It's just that the events and issues of the past few months, and especially this summer, have caused me to think hard about the purpose of a university, and specifically Washington and Lee's purpose. This is your community. It is my community. It is our community. It is a place where many individuals pursue their personal dreams and ambitions. Students, of course, and faculty who dedicate their professional lives to Washington and Lee. The staff members who take pride in knowing that they too contribute to the education of our students. Alumni who are separated from the campus only by geography. They remain with us in spirit, just as their university remains with them every day of their lives. It is a community, and while I care about each and every one of you, I care perhaps even more, given my position, about what we achieve together. We are many, we are also one. We exist as a university so that we learn together what we cannot learn alone. I said recent events have caused me to reflect on these deeper questions. Our new students may be blissfully unaware what I mean by recent events. Your thoughts today are probably exactly where they should be. You are excited about what lies ahead, the courses you will soon start, the professors you will soon meet, the friends you will soon make, who will be a part of your lives well beyond your time here as a student, the teams you will play on, the clubs you will join, the offices you will hold, the decisions to be made, your major, your summer jobs, your lives upon graduation. Even some of the faculty may be blissfully unaware what I mean by recent events. Immersed in their research and writing this summer, They may have filtered out the noise and concentrated on their own professional development. That hasn't been because the events I'm referring to have been ignored by the media. Our local papers and television stations plunged into the unexpected drama of the last few weeks. So did the regional and national media. We have been praised in most quarters, vilified in a few others. I'm referring, of course, to our decisions to remove the decorative replica Confederate battle flags from the statue chamber in Lee Chapel's public space, and thereby return the area to the way it was envisioned originally by Lee's family and Lee's friends, and the way it stood for the first 60 years. To restore some original flags and display them in the Lee Chapel Museum, which is the appropriate way for an educational institution to treat genuine historic artifacts. To examine our history straightforwardly and accurately, with all the respect history deserves, including the contributions of enslaved African Americans from 1826 to 1850. To honor our traditions reverently but not blindly, to behave, in short, as an academic institution ought to behave, especially one mindful of its future and its past. And I'm referring to protest against those steps by groups and individuals who have no connection to the university, who are not part of our community, and whose purposes diverge sharply from ours. They have every right to voice their disagreement. We have an equal right to say those matters are for Washington and Lee to decide, and that we do not exist as a platform for them to assert their views. This is not a response to them. We do not wish them ill. They are who they are. We are who we are. And we can't be distracted by those who object to one piece of what we have done while we are consumed, as we should be, with the nobler purpose of defining the kind of community we wish to have. Controversies other than our own have also gained my attention in recent days. In June, the reputable Economist magazine had a cover story on the welcomed earthquake that will disrupt higher education. Not to be outdone, the September edition of the Atlantic Monthly had a dramatic cover depicting a wrecking ball blasting through the walls of higher education with the stark headline, "Is College Doomed?" I served this year as chair of the board of the Association of American Colleges and Universities, an association representing 1,300 colleges and universities, and so have found myself addressing a few other matters, including the misguided attempt by the Department of Education to rate colleges on a series of metrics that have little to do with the quality or essence of education. The story about higher education these days, sadly, is more about confusion than disruption. Confusion about what colleges and universities contribute to a democracy. It is a story of defining education down, reducing it to a purely instrumental pursuit, and overlooking the historic responsibility universities have been assigned to preserve, define, and develop the virtues a democratic society requires. I had a choice this summer: to immerse myself further in the details of our particular controversy and those beyond, or to think about the broader lessons for Washington and Lee, for higher education, and for higher education's place in a democracy. I chose the latter. Democracy is both a strong and a delicate political form. As Martha Nussbaum explains, democracies are capable of great and rational powers, but also prone to some serious flaws in reasoning, to parochialism, haste, sloppiness, and selfishness. This country was and is a test whether the promise of democracy can prevail over its perils. It has been frequently remarked, Alexander Hamilton wrote in the very first paragraph of the very first Federalist paper, that it seems to be reserved to the people of this country, by their conduct and example, to decide the important question, whether societies of men are really capable or not of establishing good government from reflection and choice, or whether they are forever destined to depend for their political constitutions on accident and force. At Washington and Lee, we are not as confused as they are at some other places. We know what we are about. The arc of our own institution's history, which begins with Liberty Hall and Augusta Academy, moves through the time of Washington's gift, Lee's presidency, and into our present day, tracks so well the arc of our nation's history from the founding through the Civil War and also into the challenges we face today. We have long committed ourselves to educating students for lives of responsibility and integrity, and for the larger public good, and for graduating productive citizens. Productive, yes, but importantly, citizens. We can never take that mission and sense of history for granted, nor can we back away from the obligations it imposes on us. Nor should we be smug in believing that we always achieve our ideals and aspirations. Asserting them is not a conceit that we perfectly fulfill them. But I am proud that we stand for something. From time to time, we need to describe what we do confidently, forcefully, and unapologetically. Let me start in an unlikely place. In his recently published book on the economic crisis of the past few years, former Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner describes his frustration dealing with those who have, and I quote, excess conviction relative to knowledge. You don't have to agree with Secretary Geithner's policies to sympathize with the sentiment. In fact, if I had to characterize the state of public discourse these days across a broad spectrum of issues, it would indeed be excess conviction relative to knowledge. Opinions are the starting point for pronouncements. Analysis and reason come later, if at all. There is an implicit belief that ratcheting up the volume and the level of offensiveness is a compelling path to persuasion. There probably was never a golden age of public discourse. Maybe there were times when it is even worse than it is now. But current conditions cause us to tremble for the future of democracy. I lay some of the blame at the feet of advancements in technology. The quality of argument has diminished in direct relation to the growing ease of transmission of opinions. That is not the prevailing view, which is that easy access to more information makes for an enlightened and empowered citizenry. But information is not the same as knowledge, and the massing of data is not the creation of knowledge. Our opinions flow more freely and with less restraint these days. But a few speed bumps along the way may not be a bad thing if they cause us to pause and reflect and give it what we used to call a second thought. The symptoms are apparent. The emotion that pervades our public discourse at the expense of reason, the misinformation that gets repeated so often that it becomes impossible to correct as it enters the stream of communications with such velocity, the personal invective that, coupled with the intense emotion, pushes substantive, rational discussion far to the margins. The premium placed on pithy simplicity at the expense of subtlety, precisely at a time in our history when we are dealing with issues that are enormously complex and challenging. The new mechanics of information delivery, which tempt us to depend upon such things as curated news sites, thereby creating our own echo chambers. The certitude that overwhelms humility and eliminates the possibility of actually changing your mind because you learned something new. Thoreau, a writer we rightly revere, once advised everyone to simplify, simplify, simplify. Although, as the cartoonist Gary Trudeau noted, if Thoreau really meant it, he would have just said simplify. I'll grant Thoreau his poetic license, and in fairness, his admonition was to live simply, not think simplistically. Still, another symptom of the current age is seeking refuge from complexity by fleeing into the protective arms of ideology. Bart Giamatti, the president of Yale from 1978 to 1986, and yes, later commissioner of Major League Baseball, was an eloquent defender of the same values of higher education I'm setting forth this afternoon. He was writing during a different time with different challenges. The moral majority was ascendant at that time, and President Giamatti wondered whether, in their dogmatic adherence to a simple set of positions, their call was a cry of exhaustion, a longing for surcease from the strain of managing complexity. He was, however, an equal opportunity critic, calling out the atmosphere then on college campuses and blaming it in part on the voices of the moral minority. The voices that for every cause, social, political, academic, sexual, religious, or ethnic, demand satisfaction now. These voices, he said, are scornful of complexity, indifferent to ambiguity, contemptuous of competitive views or values. They are enemies of give and take, of the open conversation that is the process of education. Hungering for decree, for absolutes, these voices are encouraged because they are said to be idealistic. What they are is precisely not idealistic, but in their simplifying, reductionist. Giamatti's point, and mine, is that colleges and universities must be the institutions in society that push hard against the headwinds of complexity, straining always to work towards the truth, never surrendering and never retreating to the calmer, safer harbors of simplicity. It was true when he was writing a few decades ago. It is even truer now. This grasping of simplicity to avoid the burden of complexity reveals itself in another discussion of higher education today, and that is the attempt by the Department of Education to find the system of metrics to rate colleges. The most important things we do at a university are the most difficult to measure, especially at a college such as ours that claims to be educating students for character. But if you are a metrics-obsessed person, you need something to measure. So the trend in higher education is to measure what can easily be measured, not what is important. When I've been engaged lately in discussions over the proposed rating system, I find myself hearing the echo of a voice past, that of John Henry Cardinal Newman, the 19th century Irish educator, whose words remain some of the clearest about the purpose of a liberal education. Education is a high word, he wrote. It is the preparation for knowledge, and it is the imparting of knowledge in proportion to the preparation. The best telescope does not dispense with eyes. The printing press or the lecture room will assist us greatly, but we must be true to ourselves. We must be parties in the work. A university, according to the usual designation, an alma mater, knowing her children one by one, not a foundry or a mint or a treadmill. A rating system of a few metrics would be worthwhile for measuring our outputs if higher education consisted of foundries, mints, and treadmills. One other symptom of the plight in which higher education finds itself is the frenzy over innovation, or even better, disruptive innovation. Our time here today permits only a small point, which I attribute to the Harvard historian Jill Lepore. She notes that we used to talk about progress, with all the connotations it had for improvement and advancement. Innovation, as it is currently used, is an empty vessel, an end in itself, revealed in the supposed truism, innovate or die. But innovate to what purpose? When reading the innovation literature, or perhaps the gospel, I find too little concern with how innovation improves learning as opposed to making it cheaper or more entertaining. And I worry that the vacuum of purpose will be filled with goals that are very, very different from those we currently attach to liberal education. Innovation is not necessarily progress. So the purposes and values of higher education reveal themselves in the choices we make. We choose reason over emotion, knowledge over information, humility over certitude, progress over innovation, complexity over simplicity, and education over indoctrination. These are not tactics. They are not part of the higher education playbook to be found in discrete courses or readings, not outcomes to be measured in surveys or exit interviews to determine the return on one's investment in a college education. They are instead habits of the mind and virtues of the heart. They form a foundation for how we think and how we treat each other. They constitute an intellectual temperament, a touchstone for any liberally educated citizen and leader. And because the benefits of a liberally educated mind spill over from the individuals who acquire it into the quality of the society we create, even if we could measure return to the individual, we'd miss a vitally important outcome, a civil and vibrant democracy in pursuit of the public good as well as private benefit. It was Cardinal Newman again who told us that at a university, a habit of mind is formed which lasts through life, of which the attributes are freedom, equitableness, calmness, moderation, and wisdom. This, said Cardinal Newman, is the main purpose of a university in its treatment of its students. A university, and I hope Washington and Lee, instills certain virtues in students, certain intellectual virtues, without which a democracy cannot survive. I want to return to where I began, which is why the events of this summer were at least one reason for me to consider these deeper questions. In the midst of some of the criticisms we have received from those outside the community, and a few from within, it has been tempting to respond directly. But we have refrained for a variety of reasons, sometimes because we have a university to run, sometimes because we would have to engage on terms that have little to do with how a university operates. We have a different position because of the values and ideals we hold. And we have a different way of expressing that position, also because of the ideals and values we hold. In the end, though, we are interested in how we build a community of respect and trust for all who belong to it, where cooperation prevails over confrontation, and thoughtful consideration of diverse views is seen not as a weakness, but as a strength. With that in mind, from all the letters I've received this summer, let me share with you portions of some that capture that spirit and captured my attention, such as the one from the father of an incoming student who found the university's position so thoughtful, rational, even-keeled, as to make me realize again just how fortunate we are that our son will be matriculating next month. The mother of a current student whose ancestry traces back to the graduates of what was then Washington College and whose relatives fought in the Civil War on the side of the Confederacy, who applauded the university's ability to look deeply at its own history and the nation's. The Black alumnus who viewed our steps as advancing the dialogue over history, as he said, not their history only, but also my history. And then there is this letter from an alumnus, class of 1949, which I will quote at some length and make available in its entirety with the text of my remarks later. Dear President Ruscio, I've been following the issues. I write to offer my unqualified endorsement of your response to those issues, especially your forceful support of my great-grandfather's presidency of Washington College and your plans for the Confederate battle flags. I believe that the 5 years he spent as Washington College's president were as important to him as they were to the college. His passion for using his position there to help heal the wounds of war was apparent through both his words and deeds. Based on everything I've heard or read, letter goes on, it is clear to me that President Lee would wholeheartedly support your goals of making Washington and Lee a welcoming environment for all students who choose to come there today. As a proud alumnus, I too support those goals. In my view, removing the flags from the statuary chamber is overdue. At the same time, we should not simply ignore the flags, and their undeniable historical significance. Your plan of returning the actual battle flags to Lee Chapel Museum is the ideal way to study and care for these important artifacts. Letter goes on. I am proud of my alma mater. I am certain that my great-grandfather would be proud of the institution he once led, and I know he would appreciate the civil manner in which you have approached what must be emotional discussions. But most important of all, I trust that today's students will be reminded of just how important the university's core values are. In my opinion, the qualities of honor, responsibility, civility, service, and leadership that Washington and Lee instills in each generation of students are just as important as the exceptional education it provides. Please know you have my full support and my best wishes. Signed, Robert E. Lee IV. These discussions are significant for us. They are about what Washington and Lee has been in the past, what it is today, and what it will be in the future. No matter the differences across time and across generations, and across the many individuals who live here today, a common unifying thread binds us all. This is a community based on trust and respect, one that seeks common ground and celebrates differences, one that seeks, in Giamatti's wonderful phrase, to become a free and ordered space, one where freedom is coupled with responsibility, where individuality is coupled with a commitment to a common good. A place, in other words, that prepares our students for lives as responsible citizens in a democracy. That is what any university should do, but especially this one. In the months ahead, in the years ahead, we should not shy away from these matters, mindful of our past, mindful of our future, and mindful of our responsibilities today to preserve and enhance this community of trust and respect. Thank you, and I wish everyone a wonderful year.
In the shadows of white columns, we stop to hear the chimes, worn steps on which we linger, slowly yield to time. But when we doubt our future's course, our honor sets us free. A timeless trust in our alma mater, Washington and Lee. As the bells ring out the hour and echo through the halls, we
Thank you again to the University Singers. You can stay standing. I just have a few quick housekeeping announcements. First, we acknowledge with thanks the generosity of the class of 1942, whose gift supports the opening convocation each year. And second, I thank the dining services staff for their wonderful food that awaits us in Cannon Green. I hope you all will have time to join us over there. And in my official capacity as president of Washington and Lee, I declare the academic year formally open. Good luck.